Back again for another day. It's a bank holiday weekend, which means I should hopefully be able to get 3 days done. I was a bit worried. I had a skip turn up today because I've got just a lot of stuff. I've got all of these bags of plaster, all this timber, and more to come as well. So there's a lot of stuff that I need to actually get out of the house before I can start making moves forwards on the next bit, which is going to be insulating this roof. I need to be doing a little bit of additional insulation in places like this where we don't actually have the fallback insulation because it was behind lad and plaster, which obviously I've taken off, but this is how it should be. 50mm in between the rafters, 50mm on the front of the rafters. So I know that's only going up to 100mm, which seems like a very low specification, but because it's an existing structure and because headroom is already limited, you can see how much of the room I'm losing just because of headroom. So there's not a huge amount of space up here. That's why I'm allowed to have less insulation. Same thing on the windows as well, right? So on the dormer windows, we've got a limitation by how much insulation we can actually fit on the side without infringing upon that glazed area. For today, I think my job is mostly just going to be taking out bags of plaster that we've taken off the walls to the skip, taking out timber, taking out any little just rubbish, basically clearing the house out again. Not the most interesting viewing when it's just yet again clearing up, but this is the reality of doing a house project like this, DIYing a house project like this. There's a lot of back and forth, doing a job, clearing up a job, doing a job, clearing up a job. That's just how it goes. That's how it's going to be for the next 2 years. So wish me luck. Okay, another day gone. This one felt unproductive and then felt quite productive. So like the first half of the day I spent just moving out bags of rubble. There were 54 bags across 3 floors in the house. So it was just like a lot of stairs. I was expecting it to just be like half, at most half of the skip. I've got an 8-yard skip outside, 8-ton skip. And I've filled it completely. I've now opened up the space. So up here, we can see that this was where all of that plasterboard was stacked, all the old stuff. We had a load of timber down here, that's no longer there. And also like a big change this afternoon, these stud sections have gone. So they were too tough to actually pull out. All of the nails in these, they were these really aggressive brad nails. Like these square section, very aggressive, very large nails, and because these are steel or cast iron, and the studs, because this is built in Victorian period, they built it all out of quarter sawn oak, just everything. So it's really lovely timber, but when you put steel in oak, because of the tannic acid, it goes black and it corrodes and it binds everything together, which means it's very difficult to remove things like those very high surface area nails, even smashing it with a hammer. So I opted in the end just for going up with a jigsaw and trimming them off at the top, which worked much better. Oh man, I'm exhausted. I've been up and down the stairs in this house today 150-ish times in terms of like flights of stairs, but my legs are shot. And obviously that was bags as well, like 20 litres of rubble, 20-30 litres of rubble each time. Oh man, it works out as a lot, doesn't it? Like over 1,000 litres of rubble I just tracked out. So there we have it. This is the now fully opened top floor. Because I'm just me, and this is kind of, I don't want to say a bachelor pad, but it doesn't need necessarily to have all of the privacy of a normal house. I will add doors and things and an ensuite. I think it would be gratuitous just to have this, but isn't it nice? Like, just imagine if this was like a big open bedroom lounge out, kind of like hanging out area. That'd be nice. Just a bit of I don't know, like a lighthouse, like you were just at the top of the house, come up the stairs to a nice big open friendly area just to hang out. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? Should this be a master bedroom with ensuite, or should I just keep the room directly below us, the crucifix room, as the bedroom? Have this as a sitting room? It's just such a refreshing sight to see it open like this. You really get a sense of the size of the floor plan, and it's actually very generous. It's a very good sized house. I'm very happy. Quite an easy one today. We are just stripping paint off these joists and a few bits down on the ground floor. Also going to need to think pretty soon about how I'm going to wire up lights in the basement, sockets to the ground floor, and ring mains coming through the house, just because I'm going to need to be doing the insulation underneath the ground floor at some point. Also all of the plumbing. Oh, so many things. The problem with a house like this, a project like this, is I just have no idea what I'm doing. I don't know what order things should happen in, and I don't know like the priorities to keep things in. This is why I really wanted to have a project manager before, because you know, somebody who has experience of the building trade and of building buildings can have a little bit more wherewithal when it comes to this kind of decision making. I find this stuff really difficult because I just have no idea. So that's how that is. That's just what we're doing at the moment. So today I just need to get the paint stripper up, leave it for an hour. I'll do a tip run, come back, scrape it off with my trusty scraper, and hopefully we'll be pretty much back to wood. I really love timber as a natural material. I really love natural materials. So yes, the more that I can leave as just natural exposed wood, the better for me personally. Just like general well-being, I think the more in contact you are with the materials around you, I think the better. I am quietly optimistic. We're starting to see this paint is just bubbling and boiling and blistering. That is exactly what I want. Just something really shagged to start scraping away. Nearly done for the day. We can see that these are pretty depainted, kind of. Where the blue was on it, it was ridiculously thick. There was like blue paint, and we got that pale blue undercoat, and then we've also got a cream paint, which is the same cream paint that was over here, which you can see has stripped better. And then that also had its own undercoat. So there was a white undercoat there. So there's 4 layers of very thick paint. And then this one, obviously there's still a lot of residue. So I'm thinking that I should do at least 1 more strip on this blue stuff. It might take another 2 strips. Just have to see how it goes really. But it's a beautiful bit of timber, and it's just such a shame to have it painted. So definitely want to get that exposed a little bit better. Want to get the rest of that paint stripped off as best I can. It's a little bit difficult over the stairwell. Need to work out how to deal with that. But if I do another paint strip, then I can come back with the belt sander and just get it belt sanded, because that'll take off a lot of material quite quickly. And then I can just use an orbital to smooth it up and get it back to like a finished grade. I've just been doing this one section today, just literally from this point up to the end, just stripping it very, very methodically. I put on a huge amount of paint stripper. I bought a new pot, just covered it, absolutely lathered it. And that did a pretty good job of actually taking off the rest of the paint, but I've still got an issue with paint in little holes and things, like you can see up here, we've got this white patch. So right now, well, I do have a little scraper, which I might just take off those last little bits with once I get a little bit of patience back. But what I've been doing for the last maybe 10 minutes is just sanding with a belt sander, which is one of these. So a belt on the bottom, which is already pretty shagged after just a few minutes, just because there was residue and paint, like the fixative from the bottom of the paint. And it's gumming up the sandpaper so quickly. And also, the timber doesn't even look that nice. Like, what am I supposed to do with this? So, I need to make a decision about whether or not I just sand it up and paint it, or if I go the extra hog and I try and get them both perfectly finished. That top one's going to be difficult. I'm literally going to need to bring in a scaffolding tower just so that I've got a way to stand up there. And what's more is I have this one in the bedroom side, which is a little bit more exposed. It's already mostly back to timber, that one, to be fair. So that one I can just look at sand. We'll see how we get on with that. I'm just going to keep going with this basically now for the rest of today. I've been on this one piece for maybe 3 hours today. It just takes time, and it is super physical for someone like me who is very unfit. Okay, so I have now sanded as much as I can off this. My hands feel very tingly from holding the orbital. You can see this section here, this is pretty loosely sanded. This is where we've still got a lot of the base from those previous finishes on there, which is why it's a bit orange. And that was really gumming up the paper as well, so I didn't want to do too much on that. You can see the rest of this as well, there's quite a lot of residual stuff, but I'm thinking that we can probably get a varnish that brings it down to this nice red colour. I think really like that sort of cherry finish. I'm thinking it probably is just like a pine, like it's just a very well-aged pine. It's what, like 130 years old? So it's super, super, super hard. But it's coming up all right. There's definitely these scratches. I don't think there's anything I can really do about them at this point. I can gouge them out if I really want to. But we can see that we've got quite a lot of this down to timber now. There is definitely some residue still in the corners. I feel like there has been a really considerable amount of progress today towards having these, at least towards finding out if it's worth it. I think it is. I think I can get it stained nice and orange. Big improvement. There's still more to take off, but we're making good progress here. Back again this weekend. I am going to be sanding off our old purlins once again, spending another day on it. I brought scaffolding with me this time, so that should be a little bit easier to actually get up to that level. And my parents were here just to help me put up the scaffolding and just have a look. My mum's not actually been here since like Christmas, so 7 or 8 months ago. So it's quite changed. She hadn't seen the wall openings or any of this stuff I've been doing on the top floor. Yeah, and like what I was saying last week about how it would be nice to sort of have this like as an open reception room, bedroom. Like if I was just a bachelor and I was going to stay like that forever, then maybe I would do that. But actually, I was chatting to her about it, and it seems like, because it is just such a big space, like it's so arresting coming up here, I can make this room, this attic space, into a really nice living space. Not have to do anything with an ensuite over there behind me, although I was looking forward to doing the ensuite, but in actuality I do already have a bathroom, which I'm going to be modifying anyway. Part of this comes from me wanting to save money, because frankly this is an extraordinarily expensive project to have as a hobby, and then also because I'm just pretty lazy and I want to be finished sooner than later. And if I could basically just have this room and board it up, like make it good, sand up these purlins, make them really nice, exposed timber, do whatever it needs doing. And then I could also, over on this wall here where we've got the my one chair in the house, this is actually the chimney breasts. If I can work out which one of these is my chimney that comes up from the room below, then what I can do is I can actually breach into that, have somebody who is a professional breach into that, and then I can set that up with a log burner up here, which would be cool. And then in the room down below becomes the bedroom, which is, I mean, it's pretty untouched at the moment. It's not as grand and as big. The other thing that my mum was saying, which is absolutely valid, is that this room is going to be significantly quieter, and it is also already on the same floor as the bathroom, which means I don't really need to create a new bathroom. I don't need an ensuite if I have this one nicely set up. So that would be a nice, potentially, way of doing it. I just need to consider this seriously, because that top floor room, it kind of designs itself. Like I can just get a big sofa, and it's big enough to play VR games, it's big enough to get a projector and a screen and have a log burner and a little table and just have a really nice entertaining space. And then I've got my office up there as well. It's a cool house, it's fucking cool, and it's big. And I just need to work out what is worth doing. So my jobs for today are sanding a lot more. That's it actually. Today is just sanding. I think we're actually getting there. I am absolutely exhausted. I've had my arms up above my head with the belt sander all day, and I think I've got through 7 belts. They cook and then they burn and then they snap because they're getting really gummed up with the it's like a gum from the base of the paints. You can see it's where all this red stuff is. I've got through to the timber. In general, that top one you can see it's still pretty mottled, so I'm like just barely through. But then on the other one over here, you can see it's a much more uniform color now. So the last stuff that I want to do in here is just to get an orbital on it and take off a little bit more of that timber. On the front here where it's going to be seen, I will belt sand it again. It's much easier to. But I'm thinking, now I've had this in my head all day, just sort of chewing it over. Stairs are here. So you're going to come up around this side, and then you've got a little stub wall here. If I board out the back 3, leave the front 2 as just like open timbers and get them sanded down nicely, that would be quite nice. And what I can do is I can put a nice tall speaker on both sides, a roll down screen from here that will come down basically to the floor. So that's quite a nice large space. That's 6 foot by 10 foot, something like that. And then behind this top one, I can put a short throw laser projector shooting down at this. And that means that no one is ever going to walk in front of the projector if I have it way over where I'm stood now. So that seems like a pretty nice way of doing it. I am liking this idea of not putting a wall in here, just because it is such an unusual space that you get to the top of the house and then there's just this enormous expanse opening, and it's connected to the main circulation. It's part of the heart of the house. All of this is really just about making the house feel more connected, having more of a communal core. Obviously, it's just me. Communal is an idea rather than the actual practice of what the house is going to be like. But opening it up on the ground floor, making that double room kitchen, making that into a double room for the kitchen dining room. Actually, technically the same size as this level, minus the hallway. So this one is slightly larger in practice. So there we go. I just need to get this one finished. These buttons, these beams are taking absolutely ages, but I think it's worth it. It's one of those projects that you can just kind of keep going at. Another day of sanding here, once again. I think I've got the main 2 on this side mostly where I want them. That top one still looks a lot discoloured. I just need to do one pass of this side, which I think will even it out a little bit more. But honestly, a lot of that discoloration is going deep into the timber and I'm just not able to really get it out fully. Then we can see this one over here is still that kind of orangey colour. I haven't really been able to touch that. I've still got ceiling on the other side of it, which I want to pull down so that I can really access that back face. I also don't have anything over the stairs at the moment that actually affords me access there, which makes it a little bit more difficult as well. So I do need to just touch up that bit. We can see though the top one, excusing the sort of bruising and the discoloration, we're very close now. The arris is a bit dark, which you can see there, and it's still a little bit dark right on the end, but it's an improvement. So for now, just because I'm very tired, I'm just going to focus on this big beam up here. We can see on this side that we've got all of this sort of green bluish undercoat that is left on here. This was clearly stripped back in the 80s when belt sanders weren't really a thing, so this would have just been basically hand sanded back, maybe scraped with a scraper, and obviously chemicals. You can see here I've just been doing a bit of actual sanding with a belt sander, but we can see just immediately next to this, so good timber. I'm happy to almost leave it like this really. I'll just give it a pass with the orbital and then it'll be stained and varnished or polished, and then this is how it is before. So I just need to make sure as I come across here that I am getting it really good down to the timber. It's just one of those things that's really tiring. And obviously it's not just the front, which is very accessible. I also have to do the underside, which is quite tiring on the arms, as well as the back face, which is a bit more difficult. But I do just want to make it uniform, smooth, consistent colour. More of the same done here. I am absolutely filthy. I'm so dusty. But it's been productive today. I saw some real movements forward with some of this sanding. especially on these upper ones. So this is the big one that's just sort of a solo on the front of the house. All of the front is that sanded now. I'm happy with that. Also got both of the arises, front and back, and the underside done. That was good. However, the back of this still needs doing. But yeah, I can do that next time. I was a bit worried about my belt sander. I've almost run out of belts. So I've got through, 17, 18 belts. And yes, it's been on a lot today. I've got the belt sander. I've got an angle grinder with little sanding pads. So that's been really useful for getting into the nooks and crannies. It does kind of carve out a little bit more than I was wanting, especially at first when it was fresh paper. But it means that I can get like right up into these corners. These are going to stay exposed, so I will just sand those. And actually you can see I did a little test there in here just to see what they are, see how they come through. And actually it's fine. It's a little bit knocked out here, but I'll come in with a bit of sandpaper and just smooth them out, make sure they don't splinter, and I'll just run a little bevel down the corners. And I also trimmed this bit of packing at the top down to fit exactly the right profile. So yeah, I quite like it, these exposed bits. And you can see as well, this makes me think this is oak. I don't know if it is, I mean it might just be pine, but the fact that the steel has reacted with the timber and gone black, that is a sign of steel mixing with tannic acid, which is something you have in oak. But I wonder if it's actually just the age of the timber. But if it is oak, that's, just more niceness about it. Feels almost gratuitous having this much freedom to just kind of follow one's ideas. And I think as well, part of that is because I don't have kids. I know I've brought this up before in videos about just like not having any timelines or anything. But it also affects the way that you design quite considerably. And I'm thinking when I'm choosing which rooms are going to be bedrooms, like, when I have kids, where are they going to sleep? But at the same time, when I'm designing a room up like this, like if I had kids, my priorities would be so different. And when it's just for me, I'm just like, little hack space, little maker area, little workshop, music room, cinema, games room, like just whatever you want. I don't want it to be bland though. This is something I really hate with multi-use spaces, is like just not committing to anything, so you just have a white box with spotlights. That I do not want. I want it to be cozy and atmospheric and fun and really like graphical. And bougie as well. Like I really love high-end residential interior design, like high-end luxury. I think it's just part of liking nice things, isn't it? Seeing as I'm doing it all myself, and a lot of that actual high-end residential stuff is really just buying a different colour paint. Like it's not more expensive, it's just not white. There we go. We'll see how we go on. We are done for today. All I've done, basically taken off the top 3 or 4 inches of the plaster. Came down a little bit more in some places just because it's been so damp, so much water literally just pouring over the plaster, so it's totally blown a few places. I was thinking, as I've said, that I'm just going to take off all of the plaster. However, this, with the clear signs of watermarks, actually really well stuck to the wall. The blue stuff less so, I think that's more recent, but this, I believe, is the original, which means it should have huddled. It should be, blown, ready to come off. But I'm not sure if it is, because it'd be great if I could keep the plaster, because that's all the way down the stairwell. And then I can just deal with the stuff on the ground floor that is particularly smelly. Beams are all done now. Just need to get in the electrician, hopefully get somebody to just lay in the cables. It'd be amazing if they could do it this week and actually lay the cables this week. That'd be fantastic. And that basically means that once it comes to the weekend, I can start sticking up that insulation, because I bought literally £1,000 of insulation. I need to get it on the roof before winter, otherwise what was the point? And it is a beautiful day today. It's turned out really, really sunny. However, even so, cold trap up here, catches a lot of wind, really cools down. So if I can get these absolutely filled up, these dormers filled up with insulation, everything's surfaced with insulation, get this partition in front made, which is literally just going to be insulation. Maybe I'll have to do studs packed with insulation and then a thinner insulation, just so that I've got something to put plasterboard actually onto on the front there. Same on this side. That is going to require me to take off the radiators, so that's, that's slightly in the future. Although maybe that should be the next thing. This is the big challenge, isn't it? working out the order of operations. Hello, it's another day of doing a bit of DIY. So today is a little bit less intense actually than a lot of days recently. For a start, it's about 4 p.m, so I'm getting here super late. But I don't actually need to do too much today. I've done a bit of shopping for electrical stuff. So tomorrow I have kind of given up on waiting for electricians, and people are just not responding to me. This was such a problem when I first got the house that I literally could not get hold of anybody to do anything, and that's why I ended up getting a project manager, but then he also could not get hold of anybody to do anything. It is a real problem with tradespeople, to be honest. You just can't get them. So rather than waiting, I'm teaching myself how to do the lighting circuits. It should be fairly straightforward. They're not massively complicated things. Yeah, they're really straightforward. It's just like a few LEDs, which are these. I've got these, which are like color change ones. So which way was that? So these can go from 2,500 Kelvin to 4,000 Kelvin, and you can have it warm up as you dim them, which is cool. So that means, because I'm not a fan of 4,000 Kelvin plus lights, because I find them really just cold and unfriendly. So rather than having that where you basically just have this awful daylight lighting in the evening when you want it to be relaxing, just using them basically as fill lights, which are going to be warm because they're dim. And then if I ever do need to just crank them up, I can set them to be a bit colder. So for lighting, I'm just going to have spotlights on that flat section. And that'll just be, obviously not all of my lighting, it's going to be mainly coming from lamps and strips and things. So I'm going to have like color shifting strips down here. I've got, on this side, I've got these little reveals on each side of the chimney breasts. So there's going to be a lot of sort of infill ambient backlighting stuff going on. Which I think will look quite nice and quite atmospheric, and it just keeps it nice and chilled. So obviously once I've got the lights in place, hanging, I won't actually put the lights on, but the wires in place, then I can put up all of the insulation boards, so that'll basically finish this stuff. And before I do that, I need to finish these. So these, I sanded them down because I'm not going to be able to sand them once the boards are up. But I'm also not really going to be able to polish them, varnish them, whatever ends up being done to them. So what I want to do today is I'm going to do a little test area. In fact, yes, I will. So I'll sand them a little bit finer. I'll sand them probably up to 200 or 180, something like that. So not super fine, but something a bit smoother than it currently is. And then I'm going to test. I've got a few little options here. So, excuse the darkness. We have a satin oak, which is going to be it's a varnish, but it's got a little bit of a sort of grey stain in it, just to kind of bring stuff down to that oak colour. We also have just a clear varnish that I'm going to try, again satin, and I also have Danish oil. Danish oil I'm expecting to be too yellow, but I bought it because I have done a lot of Danish oil work in the past. What I'm going to do is just take a section of them. I know it's a little bit bruised, but I'm just going to take a little bit up here, and I'm going to do 3 little tests. So the oak one, for my liking, way too dark. Clear, not really interesting at all. Like the timbers look nice, but they're not special. And then that last one there, the Danish, I just thought it brought out so much more of the colour. I wasn't expecting to like the Danish so much, because it's kind of a less interesting finish in terms of what people go for. Like people often go for a Danish oil or a teak oil, but actually it just looks so much better. It makes the wood look fantastic. So I reckon I'm just gonna do it with Danish oil. Tomorrow, finish sanding. I did this one beam, so I've still got these 2 to sand up. My sandpaper is actually 220, so super smooth. I wish I could convey to you how lovely this timber feels right now. It's so smooth. And once it's all sealed up with Danish as well, I'll give it a little bit of a wire wool in between coats, and it'll just, yeah, it'll be super smooth by the time I'm finished. We're getting there. We're making progress, like actual, real, measurable progress, which makes an actual significant difference to the house. We're getting very close to having the loft space insulated, which is going to totally transform it again. I've intentionally left some of this saw marks on here, as well as, well, I mean, there's no way I could have actually taken out these stains from the tannic acid. That is just definitely a part of the timber now, that's well in there. But certainly leaving some of these saw marks, it's smooth, you're not going to get splinters from it, but I did just want to keep some of the honesty about like what this timber was. So here we go, we can finally start actually putting on some of our finish. Oh yeah, look at that, man. There's just something about oils on timber. They give them such a nice wet look sheen. It's going to be really nice. So I'm going to finish this up, get all my beams done, and then I'll check back in. Just like the richness of the timber, you can sort of see a kind of translucency through it. Get those nice fibers coming in. So I pulled out the saw marks there quite nicely as well. Just, yeah, gives it such character using oil on timber. Although it does feel a bit perverse having like a literal finish coming in while I'm still ripping down ceilings, and this room needs rebuilding like fully. But that's just how it ends up. Obviously, once this is all done, it's going to be a little bit vulnerable to getting damaged. So at some point, probably when everything is done, when I'm doing final finishes, I will just give this stuff like a little sand down and a refinish just on the top coat there. But this is going to get two coats this time, 2 coats, and it really ought to have 3 plus a wax. So yes, it's just, I am finishing it, but it's not the top finish. And it just means I can then go ahead and insulate this room, which can be amazing. It's the next big thing. So there we go. I've been talking about it for weeks, been sanding for weeks. We're finally making the right progress. All right, we have finished oiling all the wood, and it looks so good, honestly. I've only done a single coat on it just because I ran out of Danish oil. I bought 500ml, I should have bought a litre. So you can see, timber just looks so good. It's probably burning out a little bit on the phone here, but I don't know how clear. You can see like the changing colours as you pass that. That's the good thing about oil, is like just how much of the natural fibres it enhances. It looks so good. You can see as well, there's that little bit of a sort of dark line across the iris. That is a little bit of sapwood that has just taken a little bit more colour. But overall, the colour is actually fairly uniform on the outside here. Sorry, on the inside of the room, and then on the outside where it's facing the window, we have a lot of bruising and discoloration. I couldn't sand it quite so much anyway, so maybe that is a part of it, but yes, it's looking fantastic. I actually really like the staining as well, because it just gives it so much more character, and it's like authentic to the house, which I think is important. Quick thing, if you are doing Danish oil work, I'd recommend that you wash your brush in white spirit. I would also recommend that you do not use a synthetic bristle brush like this, because this sort of melted a little bit and it stained the Danish oil, made it a little bit darker. That's fine, but just something to be aware of. If you are using white spirit, then make sure that you leave your cloths as just leave them out, leave them to dry somewhere that they can dry out. Do not leave them bunched up in a bag anywhere, because when turpentine or white spirit goes off, it heats up. It's an exothermic reaction, so you just have to be careful, because you can have spontaneous fires starting. So that's basically how you do it. You just mop it on, give it a few minutes, wipe off any excess, and then over 5 or 6 hours, the Danish oil will polymerize, or it will begin its process of polymerization as it is exposed to oxygen. It will start from the outside, so after 5 hours, you will be able to recoat, and maybe even give it a little bit of a rub down if it's raised any grain. And then you should only really have to rub down once if you have to do it at all. So it'll just be on that first time.
you'll get dry timbers, it'll soak up the oils and they'll expand a little bit, giving you a little bit of a nibby surface, and that's what it's called, de-nibbing. When you give it that first sand, by this point it's all saturated, it's all taken the oil. Polymerization basically just means that the chemicals in the Danish oil are polymerizing, they are combining with the oxygen and going hard. So that's how Danish oil hardens. It's not just drying out, it's actually a chemical reaction, and that's why it's important that it has that thinness to it, so it really draws itself into the surface and then dries properly in there. It's also the reason that you get a lot more of interesting coloration with oils, because they are in the surface, so they're slightly changing the structure of the actual surface and giving you a little bit more depth to it. That's why I didn't like those other two varnishes that I got, the satin clear and the satin oak, because they were both polyurethane, so they were surface varnishes. They just gave it a very flat look, basically, like it was laminated. It's been a little while since I was last here doing some proper work. The electrician has come and done a good job of all of the wiring. Much cleaner. You can see that there was, I don't know if it was on videos before, but there was some vertical cables coming up here because this was a wall and no longer. So huge thanks to the electrician. He did a fantastic job. Task for me now is get some insulation up. What I'm looking at doing is insulating the dormers now, because these are a real cold spot. I can put my hand up there and it feels cold. So what I want to do, I'm going to put 25mm up in the slopes, then I'm going to put scratchy underneath it, because I don't want to have anything that's touching the black felt, the membrane, because I don't want any capillary action coming down through there. So yes, once I can fill this up with wool, then I can put in something in between these as well. And I think maybe even something underneath it. What I'm thinking of doing, basically, maybe 100mm in sections in between these battens, and then 25mm in front, 25mm on each of the sides. Oh, sorry, that way, sides. And that'll about do it, actually. So it's cutting a bunch of pieces to like pretty close sizes and knocking them in. And then this one on the front is going to be, it's important that I have one on the front, I think, for me, because it's going to give me that, it means that I can seal up that membrane really nicely. There goes another train. It's going to be noisy living here. But what a view. I mean, look at that, that's fantastic out there. Absolutely beautiful. Just mountains, sea. Can't really ask for any more than that. That is what I'm going to be doing today, a little bit of insulation work. Finally, we've got to this stage. It has taken me a very long time, weeks, months even, since I actually had the roof finished. So what I'm going with is 25mm in the eaves, and then I've got compressed obviously down to the corners, and I wanted to put in the 25mm just so that I could compress it without touching the membrane. But we're about 300mm in the middle there. And I'm going to do another patch up to the back here, and then add a few more bits in between these sections, and then another piece in front, and that should make it nice and toasty. Okay, step 1, 2 and 3 are done. So we're now down to, I had to change my plan a little bit. This was going to be 100mm, ended up going with 50mm ecotherm on the final pass here. It was just a lot more appropriate for the size of these timbers. So yeah, just went with what fitted. So there's going to be 25mm now added in front as a final layer. And that'll sort of close off this membrane. It's getting there, like it feels more like a room again. A little bit windy here today. We have an amber weather warning here today for 70mph gusts, and also spring high tide coinciding. So there's a lot of waves, a lot of water going around. And it's just generally pretty noisy up here. I realised as I was padding up my insulation, so if we have a look at this one, you can see that we have a little bit of a gap. It's not super obvious, but there is a little bit of a gap between the side of the insulation and the window frame. And the same really applies on the front, except this time I added some little fillets of insulation to cover the
basically just to prevent cold bridging. That's really what I'm after. I need to make sure I don't get any bad condensation or anything. I realised that as I had space to put in 25mm packing on top of the 25mm, what I should actually be doing is just replacing the entire cheek with 50mm insulation all the way along it. And I will regret it if I don't. So, this is just one of those things where it's like you live and learn. So I'm going to be taking off the cheeks from both dormers. I need to double check the measurements on this back one, but I think this one as well. Certainly the front one. And I will be putting on 50mm insulation. So again, I'm a little bit behind. Obviously we can hear it's really, really freaking noisy in here. I'm just hoping it'll be quieter once I've got all the insulation on. There's also a bit of a draft coming through and rocks literally being blown out from this edge where the wind is coming underneath the eaves. I just need to keep focusing on 5 years from now, because I'm not going to remember this day where I undid a bit of insulation, and I'm not going to think, oh, if only I could get that day back. I'm not, but if I have weird steps in my window reveals and it's cold, then I'm going to be thinking, oh, I wish I'd put on more insulation here when I could have done. And now is when I can have done. So, important to prevent future regrets. Let's get to it. It has been a little while since I last did a video update here. Actually not sure when the last one was. So, situation is, I've finished the slopes. They're all taped up, insulation, expanding foam, everything that needs to happen. For those to be signed off, that's all A-OK. The dormers also all A-OK. Little bit of trim I just need to add inside on the reverse of this timber. I've also, literally just now, got the rest of the rock wall up in my roof. So we now have 200mm all over, and because I had more than I needed, there's also probably 400 to 600 varying amounts in the apex running the length of the room. So that's a big improvement. That's going to be hopefully catching a lot of the wind. I've also blocked up I had a slate vent put in because I was expecting this area to be a bathroom, but it is no longer going to be. So I've just blocked that up to make sure it's wind and weather tight. And yeah, that's all good. Obviously that's on the back of the wall now, which is fairly well blocking all of the wind. The rain that I had through the other day during Storm Debai is fixed now. So my roofer came, checked my chimney. He said that the stones making up the actual chimney stack itself, the pointing had come out. So he repaired that, and it was good to do that for free as well, because he said it should have been picked up during the roofing job, so counted within the warranty, in the guarantee. So next thing I'm going to be doing for the rest of today is, let's have a look at my list, is taking 100mm Ecotherm, this closed cell foil back insulation, and this is going to go in between all of the timbers. I need to be aware of where my 3 spotlights are. See, I've got cables run through for those. And once that's all insulated, and that's all nicely fitted in there, then what I can do is put 25mm on the front, just so I can get my vapor barrier, which will be taped up to both side and expanding foam up to the joist and wall there. Feels like we're really moving forward, especially now I've got that apex in and the dormers are boarded essentially out to the shape that they will be in terms of the actual living space. This room, although it feels smaller now, does feel like a room. Obviously the walls are a mess. I need to strip them down a lot more. There's a lot of work still to go, but the roof and the insulation and just generally being weather sealed, we are well on our way. Not quite complete. You can see I'm missing a couple of panels there, actually 3 panels. They are the ones where the spotlights are going to be. So once I've worked out what's going on with the spotlights, hopefully tomorrow, then the remaining 3 boards will go up. And so the spotlights need to have a little bit dug out in the back just for wiring and such like. Even now, it's so much quieter. Obviously, still quite a lot of noise because we're, a lot of external surfaces and not a huge distance really to the outside, but a lot better than it was a couple of weeks ago, even this morning. You can hear that train going past. It's really not noisy anymore. Crazy, ridiculous how much of a difference that made. But we're getting there. Like, we're actually really getting there. This is exciting. Top floor, very nearly done now. We've just got the last final bits of insulation to throw back up, but that is going to be after we fix the leak. You can see quite a lot of darkness here, actually, sort of all the way down this wall section. Over here, in this corner, we have a little bit of water coming through, right next to a new socket, so that's a worry. And over here, again, a little patch of darkness. This is water ingress. Got to fix all of this stuff before we go and get decorating. However, fortunately, don't need to start decorating for a year, maybe even longer. Might be a 2025 kind of thing. So I think at the moment, all I'm really thinking about doing is, so that wall here, I need to work out whether or not I want to insulate this or if I just want to replaster it. I just need to think about vapor barriers, that's all. Where is damp air going to be coming up behind insulation and condensing on a cold wall if I start insulating it? And how can I stop it? You know, can I just make sure that that section of wall never catches any air and seal it somehow? Maybe. Just been getting quotes recently for the office corner window, this one. So it's just working out really how far over we can come and how far back, but essentially it's the window, the roof, which includes removing this beam because that chimney breast is not going to be there because it's going to be glass. Removing the chimney breast here and here in the bathroom. So this is the not very pleasant bathroom. Kind of still in a state as it was, but there's a lot of work that needs to happen here. The conversations that I've just been having with the builder, essentially because the render on the outside of the property will also be replaced, I'm needing to make sure that my windows also are replaced before that, just to make sure that we're finishing the render nicely up to the window frames. So there's a lot still to be done here. Huge amount actually still to be done here. A lot of it I'm going to need to be doing myself. I'm very much aware of the finances. I'm very sort of constantly thinking about the numbers, constantly doing the maths. And this is something which has been quite draining this year. And I think it's given me a slightly unhealthy obsession with money. But at the same time, I think you just kind of have to have that when you're doing a project like this on very little money. This time next year, I'm going to be sat on top of an empty bank account with still 3 or 4 years of work to do on the house. It's going to be interesting. I'm going to do my best to take on as much of the work myself, and that might mean that I need to adjust my work schedule and my employment. So, you know, these are all kind of money, time considerations, but also I really want to spend the time on this house. I want to do a lot of it myself, just because I find a lot of this stuff extremely entertaining. You know, it's very cathartic, it's very satisfying to go through the steps of actually putting down physical things and just making a difference to something. So there we have it, there's my next steps. We're going to be aiming for this major works on the back. To do that requires me to do a little bit of work myself on removing and replacing windows. Probably get somebody else to do that, to be fair. I need to clean up and remove the surfaces of the bathroom just to make sure that it's deplastered. Potentially remove the bath as well. I need to do what I can to the central heating system and the plumbing, and a lot of that is going to bank on me being able to remove all of the bricks from this and this wall. So that should be my next few months sorted out, really. I just need to draw up an accurate plan for what I need to do, block out some time for it, book some skips, and that should do me. I'm gonna head home now. So that is pretty much all of the work that we've done for 2023. It's been a year. The house is looking quite different, but still quite a long way away from being a home.